or really graduate into star inhabiting. And so that's the kind of suggestion here, is that here's a little, obviously, remember I said, I was about to tell you a fairy tale. I'm not trying to sell you the fairy tale. I don't care if you're even interested in the fairy tale. It's fun. What does matter is if you accept the homework. The homework is to take responsibility for the direction of your bliss juices with the acknowledgement that this is a solution not just to a galactic controversy, but the solution to star inhabiting and the evolution of gene pools in general. There are many stories from several sources that the interventionist ETs have told, the non-interventionist ET families in general are divided, and most people agree on this, from Prism of Lara to Morning Sky to Sitchin, whatever, that the ET families can be divided into the interventionists and the non-interventionists. The non-interventionists are ones who believe that indigenous gene pools must be set free if they're ever to evolve. And the non-interventionist gene pools supposedly include Sirius A, Andromeda, Procyon Tau Ceti, and some of the Cassiopean story. The interventionists include Alpha Draconis, Sirius B, Rigelians to some extent, and others. Summary of that at lettersfromandromeda.com. So which groups were responsible for trying to prop up our ecosystem? But they do say repeatedly that they've sort of passed a law that the interventionist ETs will be essentially kicked out of here by the galactic government within a few years. And so the present conflict, which is predicted, we're going to see a major upwelling of and global trauma within months. Because this is the last stand of those interventionist ETs who are trying to make their last gasp at having control of the genetic library here. I do think loss of individual freedom is a major catastrophe to the possibility of bliss. And setting people free is the opposite of everything is under control, we have a plan for everything. Okay, that mentality, like in the European Union now, it's illegal to have one employee pick up a cement block. It's against the law. They have planned everything. You must have two. So you can't fart without a permit, right? So this is a planet on which freedom is no longer possible. And that is something to rebel against, in my view. And I'm here. A story I thought I'd begin with, for fun, was when we came out here, Noah, what did Noah say about the dude?
Oh, we're walking in the dewdrops, and it had the starlight on it all night. So we absorb it into our skin, all this starlight.
That would really, it's perfect for the theme of the day, because does anybody know the alchemical function of dew, D-E-W, what it's used for in alchemy? It has a very specific...
Rabbits like it.
Rabbits like it, yeah.
Must do them for them.
Well, my initials are D-E-W, so I get a little defensive on this.
Somebody says we don't want any dew around here. Automatic bad reaction.
Yeah, dew, drop in, right?
Walk on the dew. Yeah, you don't like getting walked on?
Is anybody familiar with the starlight elixirs from Hilarion, Pegasus Press?
Mm-hmm.
So they focus starlight into ordered water, and then they use that water to drink the memory of the civilization on that star and the effect of that star on the Earth. And they literally focus the starlight through a telescope into that water, and the water absorbs the electrogeometry of that star. And the book, Starlight Elixirs, is a review of the psychological evolution of hundreds of star systems. So, in fact, it's quite clear that whenever you get a nice spherical little capacitor, like a dewdrop, I have a way of selecting and focusing starlight. Well, you're probably not familiar with the work of Greg Hodowanik and Bill Ramsey, but it's rather famous in psychotronic circles, where they showed that what's called a passive nonlinear dielectric capacitor, it's basically the same kind of capacitor you see in there when I take hemp fibers to measure life force. And when it's seated in a place which is magnetically pristine, and they just use something called a rust track recorder to make a graph of the change in output charge of that capacitor over time. Nothing is triggering it except gravity. And these devices, the rust track recorders, if you ever saw the plots from these things, when Jupiter squares Saturn, it's amazing. Okay, and so there's a whole series of literature about this, which is effectively that a better way to watch stars is through capacitors and telescopes. And the CIA does not want you to know that capacitance can be focused like a lens, because that would mean all the investment in hiding his stealth aircraft to be wasted. But the fact is, charge can be focused like a lens, and that's what gravity does.
And through hemp.
Well, any biological capacitor.
Ah.
It's basically just a way of catching charge. So here you have this model. First of all, Hodowanik and Ramsey showed that the charge density moves literally measurably faster than the speed of light. So when you had these stellar explosions, and there's charts showing it, where a telescope has to wait 3 days for the light to get here, the capacitor didn't wait. No. And all these astrological events, then astronomic events, were mapped with charge, right? So this is the Hodowanik-Ramsey work. It's pretty famous in some circles. So what is this telling us about the alchemical function of dew? Yeah, see, the theme of today, actually this morning for a while, is around this question of what turns planets green. That is our little theme, our bumper sticker for some conversation here. And so in order to understand what turns planets green, what puts moss on the sphere, atmosphere, get it? Right, what gives us atmosphere? It's the same thing that literally puts moss on a stone. It's called the green stone. Has anybody seen the Green Stone film in the UK? A famous book, The Green Stone, by Phil Squires and Elaine Burlock, I think. The Green Stone in UK, and they started making a movie about it. And it's a book about this stone that has all these powers. Well, in effect, the miracle of the green stone is the fact that it has enough charge to orient magnetism into life. I came out of the door at Adrian's this morning, and there was a yellow flower, and I noticed that the petals of the flower were exquisitely pentagonal. And I put my hand over the flower, and I felt a wave of radiating bliss going through my body, like I often do when I smell a flower, but I didn't smell it. I only felt the charge radiating from the flower. And I thought, somebody steered magnetism into a tornado, yeah? And somebody planted the seed of that tornado, and that's the geometry of charge that steered the water coming from the stone, which we called green. You know? It's like when we saw these slides of the tree, somebody brought the pictures of the tree that's turned in a corkscrew because the underground magnetism went in a spiral. So biological intention plants the seed here for shaping magnetism so that the planet could turn green. We talked about angelic intentions yesterday in shaping a planet that could have a gene pool that become more self-aware than had happened in the stars in a long time. Now, the alchemical function of dew. You take this thing called the Philosopher's Stone. Anybody know what the Philosopher's Stone is made of?
Magnetite?
No, the Philosopher's Stone is a variation on phosphorus, I believe, isn't it? Does anybody remember? It's what do you coat the Philosopher's Stone with? A thin film of mercury. Now, mercury has the atomic mass of gold at the nuclear level, but the valence structure is different, basically. And the phosphorus and the components of the stone have the valence shape of gold, but not the nuclear geometry of gold. Now, if you got a thin film of mercury on the Philosopher's Stone, what would turn it to gold? First of all, you'd need something to make it into a monoatomic layer, so the charge could radiate through it. If anybody's familiar with the literature, we're talking about alchemy now because it's a model for the heart of gold and what turns a planet green. The word alchemy comes from alchem, chem, C-H-E-M, chem, is from the Egyptian. It's the original name for Egypt, and it means literally from the blackness, and it's the word for black. And alchemy then literally means from the black hole, which is our word for chemistry. So it's a way of navigating in and out of black holes. That's what alchemy is, which is literally how you get pressure through the speed of light in and out of a black hole. And gold is exquisite at doing that because the electron shell geometry is so fractal, so self-similar, so embedded. So literally, when the waves of charge are braided through gold, they're braided into a fractal, and they're able to enter and leave a black hole. This can be evidenced in modern chemistry from the literature that shows that if you take gold in a monofilament, like a thread, and if you shoot high amperage through it at the moment it crystallizes, it is a measurable superconductor.
At the moment it crystallizes.
So in other words, you got this gold monofilament, and you shoot high amperage through it just when it's going from the liquid to the crystal state. The high amperage persuades the molecular array to orient in perfect fractal array. You can model superconductivity by taking the Bucky-Fuller vector flexor and jitterbugging it from Icasa to cubocta, which is literally what molecules do to become a superconductor. And why are they a superconductor? Because when they assume the Icasa dodeca symmetry, the blue model in there,